Lynn Tai.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to David, you get a warm seat.
Yeah, there you go, yes. So could you tell us a little bit about how you came to Seattle and what it was like getting used to being here?
Yeah, I just couldn't help but to hear a lot of similarity and sort of like repeating patterns of behaviors collectively from David's stories earlier about the Duanish and couldn't help but find the connection with the Vietnamese American experience as well, as we will explore in a little bit. But my story was that my family and I immigrated to the United States because as a result of the Vietnam conflict. People keep calling it a war. It wasn't. It's a conflict. And so as a result, my family was part of the second wave of immigration that came as a result, as the aftermath of the Vietnam conflict. We came here as refugees, and we settled in the city of Federway. We were visiting Mount Rainier for the first time in May. As you can see, I'm trying to get acclimated, but it's super cold coming from the tropical. And then from high school, one of the reasons that I ended up joining the U.S. military was, besides the point that my only mission in life at that point was trying to be a paratrooper, was that 58,000 Americans have given their best to a country that they don't know, regardless of the political way, decision one way or the other. I thought as a second chance to be building a life here for my family, that the only way that would be equal to value would be for me to be willing to give my life to the country that was willing to give theirs. So July 3rd, 1989, the happiest day of my life, became a paratrooper at Fort Benning, Georgia, and Fayetteville, North Carolina. And then after that, after about 10 years of service, I returned to Seattle, met my future wife. She demanded that I give up guns and camouflage altogether. I so happily obliged at that point, and build a life here, beginning to really re-engage and totally immerse in understanding and building the Vietnamese American community since that point, about 1987 till now.
And so you got involved in community events? Tell us, or what was that?
Yeah, so one of the things that's just like with everyone else who have come to Seattle is like, okay, how do I fit in? How do all this stuff? And for me, it was to get back to the original roots that we came from. My mom had made sure, our family had made sure that we read and write Vietnamese and haven't lost it. So one of the places that we started to reconnect is Little Saigon, way back then. And one of the things that we go is to go food and have food every weekend. From that point, we came back and tried to integrate as I was learning to engage. And one of the first things I did was to start a martial art group that connect to that culture and also help young people to redirect their energy towards something positive in their lives. And it's called a Vo Vi Nam, which is a very popular Vietnamese martial arts system, hybrid system, that focus on community development, community engagement, and anti-colonialism, which is very revolutionary back at the time. And so through that, our youth group learned a big problem. And that problem is our community didn't have a central place. And we end up having to move to different places all the time, trying to celebrate one event that unites all people, is the Tet, which is the Vietnamese Lunar New Year. So 4 groups, young group of youth leaders, the Vietnamese Student Association at University of Washington, the Vietnamese Boys and Girl Scouts, Helping Link, which is still locating in Seattle in a Chinatown, Little Saigon district, and our group, the Vo Vi Nam system. We started a group that we jointly call Tet in Seattle, and that group has always been organizing the biggest festival event for the Vietnamese community since 1998 until now.
And it's a huge community. Give me a sense of the numbers, and then about how does that community relate to the broader city and broader communities.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, according to City of Seattle statistic, the Vietnamese American community is the second largest foreign-born immigrant community in the city. Together, King County and statewide, Vietnamese American community here in the state is the third largest in the country after California and Texas. As originally thought, the governor then, and still governor now in California, Governor Brown, refused to accept Vietnamese refugees coming at the end of the war and so ended up Governor Dan Evans in Washington State that accepted the resettlement of Vietnamese American refugees here. And so to a large degree, that has been such a strong, the Vietnamese American community and through the generation has always credited Governor Dan Evans with helping to establish the community here over time. And it's so interesting because the similarities, around the notions of being heard and seen is amazing because after nearly 70 years after the end of the war and being such a large community that's trying to assimilate is the key word. I mean, the struggle is this dichotomy that I jokingly call is this bipolar disorder in the community. In one hand, the community is super, super proud and have such a pride in the history and the cultural essence of any people that is having a long history, and then also have a sense of inferiority because they're not being recognized, they're not being heard. As I often call it, and the missing piece is that we as a people in a city and all those who have coming new and those who have stayed here for a long time, it's this ongoing struggle of being heard and seen. And oftentimes we miss the most important part is being loved. And so it's a constant struggle and it's ongoing. And that's such a powerful connection with the Duwamish people.
Interesting. And so as a Vietnamese American community, does it look both inward and outward? What is that? Is there a challenge at all with that?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, it tried to look inward as it tried to make the most out of the community asset, right? Whether it's brain power or financial support to raise the community. And much of it still, a lot of the dynamic has not been processed because of the trauma of the war. This disconnect between generations is alive and well, and we as a community have not been able to process and talk about it. Outwardly, it needs so much recognition and to say, hey, you know what, we're here and we're part of the city. And for a long time, that hasn't been the case until about 3 years ago. This is a secret, but it's no longer a secret now, I guess. But I was organizing the community and organizing and connect with city leaders, elected leaders, at times of re-election campaign for many of our council members and the mayor's office that were able to finally get the city of Seattle to pass a city council resolution to recognize the symbol that we call the Vietnamese American heritage and freedom flag. For many, it's sort of like, hey, it's harkened back to a symbol of South Vietnam during the war. But I just keep telling people, it's like there's so many young people that have been grown up that don't know anything or have bought the narrative of the American experience at that time. But collectively and unitingly, everybody understand and appreciate and grasp and hold on to this cultural symbol as a way to recognize who they are. And it was 3 years ago in July that the city of Seattle has passed a resolution to recognize that. And I was, at the time, I was in the city of Granada in Nicaragua. So it was like, Lynn, are you coming? Yeah, I'm coming. Are you going to be there? They're going to vote soon. Yeah, I'll be there shortly. About 5 minutes till, they're voting. Where are you at? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm going to break it to you. Just a small group. I'm not there. And it's like, where are you? Nicaragua. And and it was fantastic because it harkens to a phrase that I often used in terms of the civic engagement component. that a great thought leader named Lao Tzu in China have once said that if you want to lead people, walk behind them. And I tried to operationalize that ever since in my work in the community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Well, thank you for making this your home and for sharing some of it with us.
Yeah, and thanks a lot. And like I said, I mean, I guess my only ask is that, hey, if you guys are interested in knowing more about the community and seeing them and recognizing them, a good starting point would be the TED in Seattle event. But there's other ways to do that, and just don't be shy. And we're complicated as you are. We have issues as you are. Just reach out to us, and food is a great conversation starter, and goes from there. And be willing to ask tough questions, emotionally charged questions, because I think that's the only way it'll help you, that the greater Seattle community can help us unpack so many things and help us integrate and coming out better. That would be my ask.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.